Okay. So today we have verses 7, 8, 9, and 10 of chapter 18 of the Bhagwad Gita lined up. I will start with verse number 7. I will chant. Niyatasya tu sannyasaha कर्मणो नोपपद्यते मोहातस्य परित्यागस्तामसा परिकीर्तितः. So the verse translates to, verily, renunciation of obligatory action is improper. Tyag or relinquishment of that from delusion is declared tamasic. So let's take this up word by word. Niyatasya. So what is obligatory or obligatory? Tu verily sannyasah, renunciation, karmana, of action, na not, upadhyate, proper, mohat is from moho or from delusion, tasya of that, parityag, relinquishment, tamas, sah or tamasic, parikirtitah is declared. Right. So, verily renunciation of obligatory action is improper. Tyag or relinquishment of that from delusion is declared tamasic. So, relinquishment of that means relinquishment of obligatory action. From delusion is termed tamasic. So, let's chant it together. नियतस्य तु सन्न्यासः कर्मणो नोपपद्यते मोहातस्य परित्यागस्तामसः परिकीर्तितः. So, as we just recapped, that Lord Krishna had said that in his opinion, Tyag is also of three kinds. So he starts now by explaining to us the three kinds of Tyag, and we start with. Okay, so first and foremost, the classification into the three kinds of Tyag is based on the gunas. And gunas are also used for classification of vasanas. So the three gunas that we covered in chapter 3, verse 5. So from that point onwards, we've been talking of gunas, and we had also actually touched upon the gunas in chapter 2. So from that point onwards, we are actually talking about the gunas. So the three gunas are tamas, rajas, and sattva. And in chapter 14, which is titled Guntraya Vibhag Yoga, or the Yoga of distinction of the three gunas, Lord Krishna had given detailed insight into the three gunas and or the and how they affect human behavior. And specifically, we had covered the distinct nature of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And we had also discussed how the gunas bind us to the world and are the cause of future births, because uh, those vasanas remain with us. Now, in the fourth verse of this chapter, Lord Krishna, which we just recapped, Lord Krishna says that Tyag is also of three kinds: sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic, which is based on the three gunas. What we have to appreciate and understand is that the same structure, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic applies to all our activities. And in the previous chapter, we had seen this. So, in all our, we had seen it with respect to Shraddha, austerity, ahar, yajna, and tapa. So, in all our activities that constitute our life, we can watch the three gunas at play. When we come to tamasic tyag, it is giving up, abandoning obligatory duties. This giving up of obligatory duties is out of delusion, incorrect understanding, or just inherent laziness. Now, what is obligatory action? And so let's revise. We had covered this in chapter 3 in great detail, actually, the Karma Yoga, chapter on Karma Yoga. Never mind, I will now kind of start recapping or some of the verses that we had done then to bring out what is obligatory action and the nature of action. So, verse 8 of chapter 3 read or translated to perform your obligatory action, for action is superior to inaction, and even the maintenance of your body would not be possible by inaction. Verse 9 goes on to say, this world is bound by action other than those performed for the sake of yajna or sacrifice. Perform action for that sake, free from attachment. Now, what is obligatory action? Obligatory action is an action which our conscience is telling us to perform, or it has moral insistence. And why I am obliged to do something? Because I have received so much from my family, from my parents, from my friends, from my environment, from my organization, state, country, world. We are continuously receiving or taking from all these people on a daily basis. And yet, we are normally actually complaining about what we don't have or what else we would like to have. Sometimes it's very important to thank the Lord for all these people and everyone around us who is giving to us. So, reciprocation becomes our obligatory action. Now, verse 17, I move on to chapter 4, Jnana Karma Sannyas Yoga, chapter 17, verse 17 here also talked about action. So it read as truly action should be known, and forbidden action should be known, and inaction should be known. The nature of action is deep. Deep meaning it's difficult to understand. We do it, but we don't understand it. It's like a child just doing, or an animal just performing the routine activities, right? So, in chapter 4, we were talking about the nature of action. What I covered previously was the obligatory, was what we were defining as obligatory action. So, this verse is telling us that we should know what is action. We should also know what is forbidden action and what is inaction, right? So, the three types of actions we had covered then, and you can go through the recordings and you can also go through the verses. One was karma. Karma is obligatory action that we have to do. It is our duty. So now this was further, uh, you know, subcategorized into three: Nitya karma, Namitik karma, and Kam karma. Now, Nitya karma is, daily routine activities, looking after your family, going to your place of work, the routine activities that you do your daily exercise regime, rest, go to sleep, what it has to be done on a daily basis. Naimatik karma is occasional or special duties that we should be doing. So we decide, okay, once a week we sit down for the session where we discuss the Bhagavad Gita. Once a month I will go to a old age home and serve there. So these are the kind of special duties, or at someone's demise have to go for the prayer meeting. These are obligatory duties, occasional special duties that we do. Or if I have a puja at home, I work for that. Then Kam Karma is action based on desires. So in this mango season, you want to eat mangoes, and that is desired in action to sublimate your vasanas. So this was all obligatory actions, karma. Then we come to the category of vikarm. Vikarm is something which is forbidden. For example, theft, violence, murder, adultery. So these kind of acts which are not allowed, these are forbidden action. And we had also discussed that some actions may be allowed for a particular category of people. So for example, our defense forces, they may be allowed to shoot people, right? But not us, in the normal citizens. So some actions may be prohibited for one category but allowed for others. Our conscience at all points of time tells us which are the actions which are prohibited and which are permitted for us. So if we just listen to it, we will know. All our regrets are examples of vikarm, forbidden action, and that's why we have the regret. We ourselves are not approving of what we did. So then why did we do it? Should we have the regret? So we have talked of karma, obligatory action, vikarm, forbidden action. Now we come to akarm, or non-action. Now, this non-action actually refers to when we are functioning with complete identification with the self. So, just as the self in all our actions remains unchanged, the self is like a catalyst in the chemical reaction, right? So, the catalyst itself, it starts or promotes the reaction between two reagents, but it itself remains unchanged. So, akarma actually is action by a self-realized person who is acting but is not acting because no more vasanas are being generated in such a jnani or the wise person. So by understanding karma, vikarm, and akarm, we reach our true self. So this we had talked about when we were talking about when we were covering verse 17 of chapter 4. Coming back to this verse, what is being said that every human is obliged to perform regular routine duties, occasional duties, and special duties. We have an obligation to fulfill them as inhabitants of a family, of a state, of a country, of the world, of a community. So we have to do them. Relinquishing or abandoning these duties is tamasic tyag, because it is born out of wrong understanding. A typical example, which we have also covered earlier, is that a student says that I want to go and do community service. There's a camp going on, and it's a whole day camp on a weekend, Sunday, so not missing school. But then when you scratch the surface, you find out that there is an exam on Monday and the child is not prepared, right? So then this duty, the social attending the social camp, which is actually a good action, a charitable action, becomes a vikarma for the student, because the student should actually be preparing for the exam on Monday, on the next on the coming day. Another typical example is not taking care of our aging parents, giving them up, renouncing them actually, or giving them up in their old age. Fortunately, we don't have too many such incidents in India. Okay, the number is rising now, because as usual, we are aping the West. And in the West, it's not even considered an obligatory duty to take care of your parents. Just as the parents do not consider it an obligatory duty to take care of their children. You see, so it's a strange uh, setup. Anyway, all our regrets, therefore, are great examples of tamasic tyag. Let's move on to verse number 8, where we talk of the rajasic tyag. दुःखमेत्येव यत्कर्म कायक्लेशय त्यजेतः स कृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत्. I didn't chant it correctly, so I'll do it again. दुःखमेत्येव यत्कर्म काया क्लेशभयात् त्यजेत् स कृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत्. So the verse translates to, indeed, those who relinquish action that is painful from the fear of bodily trouble, thus performing a rajasic tyag, do not obtain the fruit of relinquishment. Let's take this up word by word. Dukham is painful. Iti thus, ev, indeed, yat, that. Karm, action. Kaya klesh bhayat. So kaya is body, klesh is trouble, bhayat is fear. Bhay is fear. So kaya klesh bhayat becomes from fear of bodily trouble. Tyajet relinquishes, saha, such a person, kritva, performing, rajasam is rajasic, tyagam relinquishment, na, not, ev, thus, tyag phalam, fruit of tyag, or fruit of relinquishment, labhet, obtains. So indeed, those who relinquish action that is painful from fear of bodily trouble, thus performing rajasic tyag, relinquishment, do not obtain the fruit of relinquishment. So let's chant it together. दुःखमेत्येव यत्कर्म कायाक्लेशभयात् त्यजेत् स कृत्वा राजसं त्यागं नैव त्यागफलं लभेत्. So we covered that tamasic tyag is abandonment of obligatory duty out of delusion, incorrect understanding. Now, what is rajasic tyag? Rajasic tyag is abandonment of obligatory duties out of fear of bodily and mental discomfort. See, the two words that we're using is dukh and kaya klesh. So, dukh refers to mental pain. Any activity or an action which disturbs the person mentally. So the person wishes to avoid mental stress, right? So that is dukh. It's at the mental level. Kaya klesh is physical pain. Person does not want to act either out of inertia or finds the action tiresome, cumbersome, painful, repetitive, boring, out of those kind of things, the person wants to avoid it. So, mental and physical laziness overpowers a Rajasic Tyagi, preventing the person from conducting or performing the right action. And now, again, let's go back. See, we have read that action is ultimately beneficial, or action that is beneficial is actually very difficult to perform initially, right? So you remember the two parts that we've been talking from chapter 2 onwards. Anyone can recollect the two parts that we are talking about? One which draws us into the world and the other one which draws us into us.
Yeah,
Anyone?
and Shreya.
Absolutely. So the Shreya path is that which is correct. The path is unpleasant in the beginning, but blissful later. So this is from the Upanishads that one is talking now. And Priya path, or the Priya path, that which is pleasant. So this path is pleasant in the beginning, but is fraught with sorrow later on. So a person of weak willpower and lazy temperament neglects the correct path from sheer effort and fear of mental and physical pain. Now, in this setting, we must appreciate that since the beginning of the Bhagwad Gita is actually a call for action. Arjun is finding his duty of waging the war unpleasant, bothersome, and as a result, he doesn't want to fight the war. he's hesitating to fight a battle which is his obligatory duty. Why? Because Arjun wants to avoid the mental stress, and he, in chapters 1 and 2, he gave all kinds of logic as to why he should not be fighting the war, and how, there's no point. So he wants to avoid that mental stress that the war is likely to give him. This relinquishment of Arjun of his obligatory duty is an example of Rajasic Tyag. And of course, then Lord Krishna explains to him that this is the act of an ignorant person and it's a weakness, and therefore he encourages Arjun to continue doing his duty, even though it may be unpleasant. At the same time, for him to become internally strong and feel a transformation, he starts enlightening Arjun with the highest spiritual knowledge, which fortunately for us is also available to us, because we are also like Arjun. We also shirk quite often our obligatory duties. Why? Because we are afraid of the extra effort, too much of exertion in those activities, getting up early, we know it's difficult. So, if we look at it, performing our obligatory duties, it's in itself tyag, because it involves a certain amount of sacrifice of our own preferences, conveniences, and physical and mental comfort. But to do these obligatory duties, therefore, we need to come out of our comfort zone, and which we don't want to do actually. We don't want to leave our comfort zone because we are Rajasic and we forget whatever we had learned in chapter 2. And you can look up those verses. But the most important learning was that we are not the body. Our true nature is our eternal essence. So we should not identify with the body, we should identify with that eternal essence. But we have a strong identification with the body and also a mind, which is part of the kshetra. Both these constitute the kshetra, as we discussed in chapter 13, the kshetragya vibhag yoga. Our eternal essence is the imperishable aspect with which we are unable to relate to and identify with. But actually, that is where the identification should be. So, in this verse, Lord Krishna is saying that giving up duties because they are troublesome at the mental and physical levels is renunciation in the mode of passion or Rajasic Tyag. And people who abandon their duties out of this fear of pain and sorrow will not get the fruit of relinquishment, which is what? Which is the purity and peace of mind. And ultimately, we want to attain that higher state of peace and bliss. So, this state is not available, that ultimate state is not available for the practitioner of a Rajasic Tyag. Let's move on to verse number 9. कार्यमेत्येव यत्कर्म नियतं क्रियतेऽर्जुन सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलं चैव स त्याग सात्विको मतः. So the verse translates to whatever obligatory action that ought to be done is performed, O Arjuna, relinquishing attachment and also fruit. That is regarded as sattvic tyag, or sattvic relinquishment. So let's take this up word by word. Karyam, ought to be done. Iti, thus, ev, indeed, yat, that, karm, action, niyatam, obligatory, kriyate, is performed. Arjun is, of course, for Arjun. Sangam, attachment. Tyaktva, having relinquished. Phalam, fruit. Cha, and ev also, so that. Tyag, relinquishment. Satvik is the gun satvik, mat is regarded. So, whatever obligatory action that ought to be done is performed, O Arjuna, relinquishing attachment and also fruit. That is regarded as satvik tyag or satvik relinquishment. So, let's chant it together. कार्यमेत्येव यत्कर्म नियतं क्रियतेऽर्जुन सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलं चैव स त्याग सात्विको मतः. So, see, we all understand that tyag or renunciation is necessary for our spiritual evolution. The only problem is that we have a wrong understanding or a flawed understanding or a shallow understanding of what is renunciation. Normally, we think renunciation is abandonment of action, that you don't do something, or you wear the clothes of a renunciate or a, um, the saffron robes and sit in a lonely spot in the mountains or under a tree and contemplate. And contemplate on what? Something that we don't know or understand. And worse, when our sensual desires are so much that actually the mind is lingering on those, and we are pretending to be contemplating, but actually what we are thinking about is, oh, maybe I should have had another mango, maybe, or some other such sensual desires. So that is what we understand as tyag. Now, if you notice the three verses that we have done, 7, 8, and 9, in this verse, interestingly, which is on Satvik Tyag, we are starting, we are stating actually the action that needs to be done. In contrast, in the previous verses on Tamasic and Rajasic Tyag, we were talking about actually renouncing actions. So in one case, not doing the obligatory actions because of delusion. In case of the Rajasic Tyag, we talked about relinquishing action which is painful or gives trouble to the body. That is also Rajasic, right? In case of Satvik, we are saying what the verse is reading, whatever obligatory action that ought to be done is performed. Right? So we are talking about actually acting. So Satvik Tyag is performing of obligatory duties. Obligatory duties again takes us immediately back to chapter. Which chapter? Yes.
The Shreya Priya chapter.
Which one?
Karma Yoga.
Karma Yoga, chapter 3. Absolutely. So again, I will read out a set of verses for you, because I think it's just very important for us to settle this correct action, because see, we talked about action in chapter 3, and in chapter 18 we are still talking about obligatory action and action. So some verses I'm quoting, and I suggest that you look up chapter 3, because the entire blueprint for action was presented before us there. I'm starting with by quoting verse number 4. Not by abstaining from action does man gain actionlessness, nor by mere renunciation does he attain perfection. So, actionlessness here means refers to that akarm that we just talked about, where you are not identifying with the action. So, you are at a different level, you are doing your obligatory duties, right? Verse 5 goes on to say that no one can remain inactive even for a moment. All are made to act helplessly, indeed, by the qualities born of Prakriti, nature, or our vasanas. Verse number 6 of the same chapter says, who restraining the organs of action sits mentally indulging in the sense objects is of deluded understanding, is called a hypocrite. Seventh verse of the same chapter goes on to say, but one who restraining the senses by the mind engages his organs of action in the yoga of action without attachment, he excels. So through action, thinking of uniting with that Paramatman without attachment, that person excels. Verse number 8, perform your obligatory action, for action is superior to inaction. And this I just quoted for you with the previous thing, that even the maintenance of your body would not be possible by inaction. And again, the ninth verse, which was just quoted, the world is bound by action other than those performed for the sake of yajna. Perform action for the sake free from attachment, right? So, and again, we had already covered what is obligatory action. And technique of right action was covered in the 10 verses from 25 to 35 of chapter 3. So, Satvik Tyag is performing of obligatory duties. This is essential. The other essential components are number 2, without baggage. And so, without attachment, which is baggage of the past. So, this we covered in the previous verse that we had done last time. Attachment is always related to the baggage of the past, or it relates to past. The third component is desiring no rewards, no fruit, or anxiety for the future. So true renunciation is therefore performing correct action and removing these negative appendages to it. The negative appendages are, of course, what? Attachment. That means worry about or baggage of the past. And the second appendage is reward or fruit, which is anxiety for the future. And again, this technique of perfect action was also briefly covered in chapter 2 and in detail in chapter 3, 4, and 5. So, clip the worries of the past, anxiety for the future, plunge into the current activity without excitement. This is Satvik Tyag, conduct of obligatory action without attachment and fruit therefrom. Moving on to verse number 10. न द्वेष्ट कुशलं कर्म कुशलेनानुजयते त्यागी सत्त्वसमाविष्टो मेधावी छिन्न संशयाः. So the Tyagi or the relinquisher does not hate disagreeable actions, nor is attached to agreeable ones, being pervaded by sattva or purity, intelligent, and with all doubts cut asunder. Word by word, na not, dveshti hates, akushalam is which is not beneficial or disagreeable, karma is action, kushale which is agreeable, na not, Anush Jate is attached, Tyagi relinquisher, Sattva Samavishta. So Sattva is the Gun Sattva Samavishta is pervaded. So pervaded by Sattva. Medhavi is one who is intelligent. Chin Sanchaya. So Chin is cut asunder. Sanchaya is doubts. So Chin Sanchaya becomes with doubts cut asunder. So the verse translates to the Tyagi relinquisher does not hate disagreeable actions, nor is attached to agreeable ones, being pervaded by sattva, intelligent, and with all doubts removed or cut asunder. So let's chant it together. न द्वेष्ट कुशलं कर्म कुशलेनानुजयते त्यागी सत्त्वसमाविष्टो मेधावी छिन्न संशयाः. So after covering the three aspects of Tyag, so Tamasic, Rajasic, and Sattvic, Lord Krishna now covers the nature of the Sattvic Tyagi so that we can understand it in greater detail and imbibe and implement these values in ourselves. So in a sattvic tyagi, of course, the sattva guna is predominant, or the purity of intent, purpose, thought. So when purity prevails in our conduct, it assists us in transcending firstly the pairs of opposites. So likes, dislikes, hot, cold, honor, dishonor, and attachment and aversion, another name for likes and dislikes. We are not overwhelmed by extreme joy or by extreme sorrow. It's not that we don't feel it, we don't experience it, we experience it, but we are not overwhelmed by it. So equanimity becomes a sattvic tyagi's essential nature, rendering the such a person balanced and poised towards all action. So even if it's disagreeable, fine, you've got to do it, so you do it, you know. So the person does not abandon action because it is painful, nor does the person continue to do the action or an excessive action because it's very agreeable. So it does the right amount of action, intelligent person. So no aversion to painful action does not mean that the person likes doing those actions. It means that the person has risen above them, and seeing it as an obligatory duty, you do it. So the essential nature that we can sum up for a sattvic tyagi from all that we have read so far is that does not hate nor feels attached, like and dislike, is not miserable in disagreeable environs, and is not attached to agreeable circumstances or environs, does his or her duties under all circumstances, whether agreeable or disagreeable, without experiencing the high and the lows of life, so super excitement and extreme depression, those peaks don't happen to such a person, and fulfills all duties, whether the person is appreciated or not. So there's no anxiety for the future or for the reward. Now, the point is, it's not that some negative impulses don't occur in such a person. So when impulses like anger, passion, jealousy, greed, etc., happen in such a person, the person does not get involved with these impulses. Unlike us, where we get caught up in these emotions, and we waste a lot of our energy in just managing them. There's no need to manage it. It came, let it go. It'll go. We don't have to get involved with it. We don't have to get try to remove it or do anything about it. So a true renunciate actually renounces the identification with the material layers and the vasanas, and the lower instincts or the lower goals are renounced. That is what is given up to make way for the higher values. So the person conducts obligatory or prescribed duties without any attachments to the fruits or the anxiety for the future. The person simply does his or her duties under all conditions, whether it's raining, whether it is cold, whether it is hot, whether the others are not supporting him, without feeling elated when the going is good and feeling dejected when the going is rough. So, what happens? The intellect and discrimination is sharp in such a person. And that is what the verse is referring to as Medhavi. So, such a person is called Medhavi, a person of clear understanding. It's crystal clear to the person what should my action be in this particular, at this particular moment. So, the Sattvic Tyagi has complete clarity in defining and choosing goals in life and the path that has to be taken. There is no confusion or doubts about what is to be done and what is not to be done in such a person. So, with that, we end our today's session.